Hello everyone, Tricks with Envision Game Community, and today we're having a look at Star Ocean: The Divine Force, the sixth title in the Star Ocean series, though not looking too particularly at the game itself, but more teaching you how to play one of the better mini-games, at least in my opinion, for the series, with the Esowa card game. I say card game in that way, or quotations, as it's really not cards, but people in the universe call them cards, so we're gonna go with that. And essentially, what the Esowa cards are units in a sort of army-style combat. They have these little models with podiums and everything, yet they're called cards. And the game gives you a brief description of how each card plays and how you are meant to win. However, this guide should give you a bit more of a more in-depth look at how to play the game, as well as some of my own suggestions. Now, you will be looking at some higher-end cards here. However, the tactics I'll show you should boil downwards. So to start off with the different types of cards that you'll have, you have soldiers, where you'll see in the right part of the screen that after you've played 3 of these onto the board, you're able to place another pawn. These can be of any type, so you can place another soldier, or you can place a different unit type. Moving on to the elites, these cards deal their damage when you place them, as well as being able to deal the same damage when you do your overall damage at the end of a turn. At the beginning of the game, when you have some of these at relatively high attack values, they can be quite useful to deal with the beginners and experts that you'll face at the start of your Esowa journey. However, later on in the leveling system, you'll find that the elites don't really keep up with other cards and their effects. That's not to say they are useless, just that they become lower tier. The next card type are assassins. I put these at possibly the second best type of cards. When placed next to an opponent card, they will remove them from play and put them into the graveyard. Unless your opponent is running the revive skill, that card will not be able to be played again. And whilst I would suggest to have 20 of these, sadly you can only have 5 of each card type. And so I do suggest, when you get these assassin-type cards, to fill your deck to the maximum of 5. They aren't too damaging, however, if they only have, as you can see here, 39 damage, they can take out units that have 300s and more. As well, that they can help save your own cards from being surrounded. I'll get into that when we get to the board. Then there are wizards, who apply a buff to all adjacent cards. And when it says adjacent, similarly to the assassin, these are in a cross pattern, so north, south, east, and west. It does not affect the diagonals. So each of these wizards all give plus 40. So in total, if you have a card on each cardinal direction, that is a extra 160 damage a turn, plus whatever the wizard does themselves. Again, this is a very good starting card to be placing when you are a lower end deck. However, when it comes to the Berserker unit, which we'll get onto in just a while, you may find that the wizards are no longer keeping up to snuff. I put them around the same area as elites when you get to the end game. Talking about the Berserkers, these cards have generally the highest attack value of any other card. You'll see in my deck, I have one that deals 341. However, you'll start with many cards similar to this, just Berserker, which is Berserker, a doubling up of the name. As you can see, they only deal 54, and at that point, you'll probably have cards that deal the same amount, or maybe even higher, as you defeat more Esowa players. Once you get to endgame, these cards are fighting for one of the top 3 slots in my own ranking system. As you can see, 341 damage is a hell of a lot of damage when compared to other class types. At the end of the game, when you have many of these dealing 300s, in a couple of turns, you're dealing 1,000 or more damage. These are very useful cards and can run very well in pretty much any deck, though much more so to the end of the game. And there are also Gunners, which, when placed, remove 2 MP from your opponent. We'll get into the MP in just a bit, though I will say these are very situational cards. I wouldn't run them in a normal deck, however, if you have lost to an opponent whose skill is very adversary to your playstyle, it could be a very useful tactic to throw in a few of these. Generally, they aren't too great against the other card options. Then we have Commanders, which is the kind of the reverse of the Mages, that when placed give you an extra MP. Whenever you place a normal unit, you gain 1. When you place these, you gain 2. So if you rely heavily on your special move, these can be quite good. Though, similar to the previous card, they have low attack values. So if you are a special move centric build, these can be useful. But again, for my builds, not too central. And probably one of the more crucial cards, though really dependent on your strategies, is the hero type. When a hero is played, every turn after that, their attack goes up by 30. If you can create a very safe corner, these just keep getting stronger and stronger, and much more stronger than the Berserkers. However, depending on what Berserkers you have, depending on what you're facing as well, you may find that a Berserker may do better. You'll see that the highest hero I have starts at 215, so they gotta wait a couple of turns to get to a Berserker's level. However, since you can only have 5 of each type, 5 Berserkers and 5 heroes could suit you nicely. And then we come back to the soldiers. Going into the special moves, which is where the MP comes into play, the game starts you off with Flame Charge, where you can deal 200 damage at 3 MP, and then for 5 and 7, that increases by 200. So the initial payment is a bit more than the payments afterwards. Generally, I would say you'd stick to around 5 or 7, mostly 7 to get the most benefit out of the MP you're gaining. However, if your opponent is using their own mages to sap your MP, you're not going to get too far with that. Then there is the Revive move, where as stated, it revives pawns from the graveyard at 2 MP and 4 MP each. These don't have the same build-up cost as Flame Charge, so it's up to you if you wish to do it at 2 or 4 MP. There is really not much difference unless you're really gearing to get a specific card out of the graveyard. For these, you could just hold on to it whenever something gets removed. This is the antithesis to the Assassin builds, though it's still gonna be taking away damage from your opponent regardless. Then there is Reinforce, where you spend MP to draw cards, 3 for 1 and then 5 for 2. This is yet another one that has a startup cost of an additional 1. It's a strange occurrence here in comparison to Revive. This is pretty much just the counterplay to having all of your cards removed from the board. If you don't want to be using Revive, you use Reinforce instead. And if you are waiting for a specific card, such as the Berserker or Heroes, this can be a very useful skill to get those out into play much earlier. This is a very good skill to be running with, but it does come down to if you're wanting something. And then there is Enfeeble, possibly the strongest skill or special move, depending on your strategies and deck types. For mine in particular, this is horrendous. It will just at 4 MP, it will remove the mage's buff, as well as stop your heroes gaining additional damage each turn. And if they are able to get to 7 MP, they stop all abilities and also remove all of the attack of your models, or soldiers, pawns, what have you. So say you had 8 units on the field, your total damage was around 2400, an enemy uses their 7 MP skill, you now have 0 damage and 8 models that aren't doing anything. This could be very strong ability, so if you're running commanders, you can use this to essentially make your opponent have nothing against you. And In my mind, if you are going for the MP build, this is a really good tactic to do against an opponent, and really annoying when it happens to you. You can build yourself out of it. It is quite a deep hole to dig out. My advice, and the one I'm running with, I use Flame Charge. To the points where Revive and Reinforce come into play, it's at the point where I probably would have lost anyway, or I have a different card I would use instead. As for Enfeeble, not many opponents use heroes in a way that you can't destroy them without this. You can normally surround them pretty easily, or use an assassin. In that case, the assassin, for having 5 of them in your deck, would certainly put this out of play. So you can see with my deck, I've got Berserkers at the top, and then some heroes. I've got one elite here just because she had a very high damage, which made her much better than a hero at the time. Certainly no more high-level Berserkers would come my way. With some more heroes, you can also see I have several assassins. With that explanation of the types out of the way and the skills, let's put them into play with this Grand Champion. It'll take some time before you're able to fight this guy, but I'll show you how to use these units to their almost best capabilities, and then you can basically slice it down with fighting. Now with Esowa, you're allowed to see both your and your opponent's hand, as it were. And again, they call them cards, but here they're models. So on his side, you can see he has 2 commanders, I can't remember what that lightning thing is. I think that might be a mage. I normally only keep memory of the assassins, to be honest, though he does also have Berserker. So, he has no assassins on his hands. We don't need to worry about any of our cards being destroyed. You can see I started with an assassin, so I always have that there to remove anything from his side that would cause an issue. And when running with heroes, you want to generally protect them, and since we have high Berserkers, we want those to go first. It doesn't matter too much if they are adjacent to lose 30, because they're still going to do much more damage than any other card. So place this in the bottom right, and generally they'll try to attack you. The AI is suited so that they remove your pawns from play.
Not bad.
It's typically not a issue. So with that, we'll place down another Berserker down here. And he is most likely going to place to the left of that, or to the north of my previous card. Or he can place randomly. They do that sometimes. I'm not too sure why they do it. I think it's because the AI is designed to not have Berserkers next to other units so they don't lose health or attack value. So with Fate, we'll place him in the bottom right corner. Now it takes 30 from both of my Berserkers, but next turn, Fate will gain 30, and the turn after that, he'll gain another 30, so at which point it wouldn't matter. And there, the opponent drew an Assassin card, which means he can just remove mine from play. It only affects you when it's placed, so you can now place a card next to him without any worry. And we may do that just to protect our hero a bit longer. We pulled out our own assassin here, which is rather lucky, so place him there. And it is a random pick, and it picked the assassin. Would have been nicer if they picked the card next to us, as they were dealing more damage. Only by a little, so it's not too much of a worry. You can see that we are building MP on both sides, and this person in particular has Enfeeble, which is going to be terrible if he is able to get 7 MP. So this is the time where having a gunner on hand would be very nice to stop him from being able to do that. So place that there, and you see we are slightly surrounding this card in the bottom right. If you're able to surround a card on all 4 sides, you will remove it from play. And he has played a card next to it so that we can't do that. So we should place another assassin to remove this card from play. And generally the AI will play it right there yet again. There's hardly any times it doesn't do that unless it has a Berserker to play elsewhere. But typically they want to protect their own units. But sadly, even though he reduced his MP, he still used the 4 MP variant, so we're no longer going to be getting any additional damage on our hero, but our hero got to 300, so he got a good enough buff in there anyway. Place down in a Berserker here, because regardless if it takes 30 away from its max, it's still doing a high amount of damage. And he has a choice of going down south there or going up there. So now he has allowed us to surround those two units. Since he has nowhere to place a unit around there, those two are going to be deleted. However, we can place our own cards in there afterwards, and I'm pretty sure they can also place in either of those areas. But if I place next to them, they'll be destroyed yet again. So generally the AI doesn't do that. You'll see in the top right that his attack was lowered because he doesn't have those units on the board anymore. And we're going to be winning in about 3 or so turns. You can see the strategy does very well. I typically will always play in the bottom right. You can play in any of the other corners. It's just the bottom right felt right to me. And since we're going to win, and just make sure we aren't going to see any shocking turns from this fellow, we're going to place an assassin here and remove that card from play, just to keep his attack low. And you can see in the bottom left, our attack value is currently 1726. So no matter what he does, unless he was able to pull out that 7 MP move, he wouldn't be able to stop us from winning. As you can see, our flame charge is currently at 7 MP. So if we use that, he loses 600 health. Not too important, as we are just going to win regardless. And at this point, you can play whatever you want. Just place a random card here. That's the elite doing his attack to start off with. Now it uses all of the other cards to attack him and win. Normally, when you win a Esowa match, you will increase your rank by 1 if you're attacking someone who is rank above you. You'll also be given Foal and a new card. However, every return fight, you only get a minuscule amount of Foal as a reward. So there is a brief description and example play of Esowa. If you use that tactic, you can pretty much win every fight. You may lose 1 or 2 depending on skills at play. As I say, you'll have to worry about Enfeeble if you are relying heavily on heroes, and if they do get to 7 MP, they will remove all of your damage. This guy was very close to it, but I had a gunner to remove his MP, and that allowed us to just have enough turns to take his health down. So, I shall thank everybody for watching this video. We'll have several others featuring Star Ocean of the Divine Force on the Envision Game Community YouTube channel, as well as a review both on this channel and on the website. Please check out all of those. Leave a comment down below of your own Esowa deck setups, as well as any other tips and tricks to win this game. As I say, it's one of my more favourite ones out of the series, and one I've spent quite a lot of time in during my run through this game. Do all the other likes, subscribes, and all that like. And if I don't see you in any of the videos that I've made about this game, I shall hope you find whatever you enjoy else on the channel.